Both my grandfathers on my mother and father's side paid the head tax, and both my grandfathers were separated from their wives for a period of 2 decades and more.
This was a white supremacist society.
One of the legacies of all this comes out of what is called heathens without souls. We were treated, that is, the Chinese were treated the way we were treated because we weren't seen as human.
We were like South Africa. We were like Australia. They had explicit policies. South Africa had apartheid. Australia had a white Australia policy. We actually had a white Canada policy.
In 1941, there were 22,000 Japanese Canadians living in British Columbia. There had been anti-Asian racism for decades, but after the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, they were now viewed by many as enemies. Within days, the Canadian Pacific Railway fired all Japanese Canadian employees. Other industries followed. 1,200 fishing boats were seized. Radios were confiscated, the government fearful that they might be used to communicate with the enemy. Muriel Kitagawa, a writer, was 29 years old at the time and a mother of 2. "We have been tempered for the anti-Japanese feelings these long years," she wrote to her brother. "It is only intensified into overt acts of unthinking hoodlumism, like throwing flaming torches into rooming houses and bricks through plate glass." On January 14th, Japanese Canadian males between the ages of 18 and 45 were taken to camps in the BC interior.
Racism surrounds us.
I live in Canada. I don't live in a terrorist country. Why is there so many turbans?
Easy to spot when it's overt like this and spread on YouTube.
All you foreigners come over and you speak your goddamn Chinese.
And here is another example of a Sikh being attacked. This time the story is from Canada, which incidentally has got a Sikh defense minister. This brutal attack caught on camera where the man was targeted only because of his identity.
Indian citizen from Patiala, Supninder Singh Khera now lives in Toronto's Brampton suburb. Unfortunately for Supninder, last weekend turned into one of his worst nightmares in a country that he calls his new home. as he fell prey to racists who thrashed him over his identity.
And when I was down on the ground, another guy, he punched me back of my head. Then the third guy, he kicked me a couple of times in the back. It was all because of my race, my color, and the headgear I was wearing.
Do we believe in celebrating diversity? Give it a round of applause for side diversity. A round of applause for diversity. All right. It's okay. Yeah.
Back up, lady. Back up.
So,
when is your Sharia going to end?
It's
we know you're about the
so.
We can tell by your votes. We all know.
That's it. It's okay. So, what this is, we don't want to be intimidated by hate. We don't want hatred to ruin a positive event, right? We don't want hatred to ruin a positive event. So let's show people how we would treat someone with love. We welcome you. We welcome you. We welcome you. We love you. We support you and we love you.
Born and raised on the East Coast, but her nationality still questioned.
People say, go back to where you came from. I'm like, where, Halifax?
She's heard it all. We warn you, the language is strong.
Camel fucker, terrorist, towelhead, raghead, packy is very common. The first time that someone had ever said that to me, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh my God, they're talking to me. And that's not really a great feeling. It's really crappy, actually.
She doesn't want to be seen as a victim, but says it hurts more when no one helps.
The worst part is not only being the victim of that type of verbal attack or physical attack, but it's being isolated immediately after.
Let's go.
The video starts in the middle of a dispute between this man and Patricia Medrano. She's the one taking this cell phone video. The encounter quickly turns violent. You can see the man kick a door at Medrano.
Why are you hurting me?
Shut up.
Things escalate when the man threatens to behead her.
Let's go. Shoot you, I'll kill you, I'll decapitate you. Okay. I'll decapitate you. Let's go. Sure. Come on. Let's go.
So itawag ka 911.
Come on. Filipino little.
When Medrano calls him out for being racist, he does a Nazi salute and says,
Big hell! Get the out of Canada.
For those devoted to fighting racism, it's a devastating setback.
Very disturbing, very concerning, and as Canadians, this should not be happening in our community. This is absolutely despicable.
The poll adds to a growing body of evidence, documenting what many Chinese Canadians have been experiencing in recent months. 50% report being called names or insulted as a direct result of COVID-19. 30% say they've seen racist graffiti or messages on social media.
My son was attending school, and a kid in his class had told him that he had the coronavirus because he was Chinese. And it was very shocking to have to have that conversation with a young child.
As we cross Canada, we're confronting some big issues, sometimes uncomfortable. Can your name and your race hurt your search for a job? That question is bringing us to the University of Toronto. We're meeting the Smiths.
Neil Smith.
Allison Smith. Anne Smith. Sarah Smith. Jill Smith. Emily Smith.
Brett Smith. Jeff Smith. Brendan Smith.
Confused yet? Well, all those names are fake. They're real ones, a bit more connected to how they look.
Vishal Sangha.
Alia Attar. Karuna Sigal. Lakshani Ganeshilingam. Sharisa Bokumesa. Yo-Yo Sen.
It's Daniel Lungu. Salim Yunus. Idris Amini. Intahan Hanan.
They all have an interest in modern prejudice and are part of a class that studies it. Some have lived through it.
Okay, which of you in your entire lives to this point feel like you have personally been the target of prejudice or racism?
So we're going to try an experiment. On the job market, do ethnic-sounding names get fewer callbacks?
Okay, so what are the jobs you're applying for?
Most of them are receptionist or administrative assistant based.
Our 10 students are each applying for 10 jobs, but with both their real name and their alias. Their resumes are otherwise very similar, though some details have been changed.
You really work at the Gap, your resume says the Gap, and the alias, just so it's not exactly the same, says you work at Banana. Okay.
So what do they think will happen?
I think that my alias name would get a faster response versus my real name.
What do you think people believe if they see a name that sounds ethnic?
Having a last name like Opoku-Mensah, they're gonna think that person's foreign, they can't really speak English, or maybe they're gonna have a hard time adjusting to the position.
A politician in British Columbia is calling on his municipality to erase a racist covenant that prevents people from selling their homes to non-white buyers. It was a shocking discovery for Marcus Wong when he bought his house in West Vancouver. And as Robin Gill reports, there are other neighborhoods in Canada that until recently had the same racism when it comes to real estate.
The British Properties is a posh neighborhood in West Vancouver, a suburb of Vancouver. This is where Marcus Wong grew up.
Well, I certainly remember the times when, going around in the community, people reminding me sort of subtly, like, this is why the British Properties are called the British Properties.
Then Wong bought a house, and there it was in writing, why he felt so unwelcome. The covenant in the land title that says, no person of the African or Asiatic race or African or Asiatic descent, except servants of the occupier of the premises in residence, shall reside or be allowed to remain on the premises.
A shocking new survey shows just how prominent anti-Asian racism is in our country and how it has become so prevalent since the beginning of the pandemic.
Our Camille Karmali takes a closer look at the numbers and how Asian communities are asking you to help.
It sticks with you for a long time.
It's an encounter Avi Go will never forget. Walking home from work past a group of people when
one of them just spat right in front of, right in my face, and I was just taken aback.
In a new study, the Chinese-Canadian National Council's Toronto chapter says 643 complaints were submitted to its online platforms between March 10th, 2020 to the end of the year. The study's author says many were fueled by inaccurate and racist beliefs about COVID-19. 73% were verbal harassment, but more than 10% were related to physical force, aggression, or unwanted physical contact. Another 10% involved being shunned, and nearly 10% of complainants claimed they were coughed at or spat on.
You want Canadian people to give money to terrorism? Is that what you want to do?
Are you ready to face racism?
I am the minority. I'm the one who's come to this country to basically just terrorize you, right?
Talk about this on Twitter. We're using the hashtag #FaceRacism.
What are you doing?
Oh, I'm raising money for Syrian refugees.
We're kicking things up a notch, using our hidden cameras to see what it takes for you to stand up against discrimination.
Well, I believe they need our support, and I want to help them.
So you want to support terrorism? Is that what you want to do?
That's Austin. He's another actor we've hired. We've written his script based on our interviews with Muslim women who have been attacked in public.
You know they're all terrorists, right? Yeah.
Will you take a stand when it counts?
You want Canadian people to give money to terrorism? Is that what you want to do? Why don't you go back to your own country, huh?
Excuse me?
You know what? This is Canada, okay? We don't wear whatever the hell that thing is in your head.
I'm Canadian.
No, you're not.
Some people turn to look, but still walk by. We watch from our vans.
You are not a Canadian.
I'm Canadian.
What?
It doesn't take long. Our first intervention.
Stop, because I will call the cops on you.
What? What's
Thank
the problem?
You.
You're harassing this woman, man.
We're going in.
This is a social experiment. These two are actors. You two stepped in. You're getting emotional. Tell me why. What's going through your mind?
I just didn't want to see somebody treated like that. I have small town values, and I guess like it just shocked me to see somebody treating somebody. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are.
What was running through your mind when you were watching this go on?
I couldn't stand it. I don't understand how people can get so rude.